December 9th, 1980. Thousands gather in stunned silence outside the exclusive Dakota apartments in New York City. The music world mourns a legend. John Lennon is dead. The night before, the former Beatle had been gunned down as he returned to his apartment at the Dakota. Mark David Chapman, a 25-year-old drifter, was arrested at the scene and charged with second-degree murder. Chapman would later say that he was a longtime fan of John Lennon. The next afternoon, the front page of the New York Daily News carried this haunting image of John Lennon signing an autograph. The adoring recipient was his killer, Mark David Chapman. The now famous picture was taken by Paul Goresh, a 20-year-old amateur photographer from Newark, New Jersey. Like Chapman, Goresh was obsessed with John Lennon.
To his fans, John could be kind. In November 1980, the fan, later to take the last picture of John alive, is granted his first photo opportunity.
So he says, well, let's take it now. Let's get it the hell over with. You never know if we'll get another chance to do it. And this was 21 days before he gets murdered. So, I mean, I was like a kid, you know, under the Christmas tree on Christmas morning. And when I stood next to him, John put his right arm around my shoulder. And I couldn't believe that he pulled me to him. And when he did that, it gave me the idea, and I held on to his fur collar. Because I was holding it almost to make sure it wasn't a dream.
It was February 12th, 1979. Paul Goresh was a part-time driver for an electronics shop. At noon, he and a friend arrived at the Dakota, posing as TV repairman. Paul carried a copy of John Lennon's first book and a bogus service order to get him in the door.
J&J Electronics, we're here to see J. Lennon.
Is he expecting you?
It's right here on my
We went
route
up to the
sheet.
doorman. You know, I showed him the service order. I was acting like because I had wrote J. Lennon, not John Lennon. I wanted to act like I was totally oblivious to who we were going in the apartment of. You know, he didn't even blink at it. It was perfect to him.
It was Paul Goresh's lucky day. By coincidence, John Lennon was having problems with his VCR. Lennon's secretary assumed that Lennon had made the service call himself.
Stop acting so nervous.
Incredibly, the two imposters were allowed to proceed upstairs.
I hear him. It's him. He's in the apartment.
So I said to Mario, I said, he's in there. I can hear him. I said, we're going to knock on the door. I said, she's going to open the door, and John Lennon's going to be sitting at that table. The adrenaline's really flowing now for me, and I'm really excited, and I'm expecting the secretary. And my chin must have just dropped.
J&J Electronic Services here.
Because I was in awe of him. I'm just staring at him. I'm amazed that he opened the door.
All right, come on in.
It was really funny because I honestly think he detected that something was funny. And it must have been from my reaction, maybe, because I was so excited when I saw him. Maybe he had seen that look before, you know, of a fan.
Who sent for you anyway?
Paul's scheme to get an autograph soon backfired. The Lennon household had recently been the target of crank calls and threats. Lennon believed his secretary had called the repairman and became angry because he'd not been consulted beforehand.
Come here.
The secretary suggested that Paul return in a few days when Lennon had calmed down.
Have you guys come back another time?
Sure, sure.
So I was like a little upset. I was proud that I got to at least see him and deal with him, but I was like a little disgusted at the way it turned out, and especially that I didn't get my autograph.
4 days later, Paul scheduled another appointment with Lennon's secretary. She had no idea that Lennon no longer had a problem with his VCR. He simply purchased a new one. Unaware, Paul and another friend arrived at the Dakota. They found Lennon in his first-floor office. This time, Paul Goresh brought a camera.
He was real friendly and cordial, and he said, I want to apologize to you guys for my behavior the last time. He said, but I wasn't mad at you guys. He said, I was mad at my secretary. And I almost wanted to tell him at that point, well, you know, it wasn't her fault either, because I'm just a fan, but I still wanted to get my book signed.
Come on. Actually, last time I was here, I brought a copy of your book with me, and I have it with me now. I was wondering if maybe you'd autograph it.
He says, I don't give autographs hardly anymore. He says, but I figure I owe you that much.
I really don't want to.
And then he spots an Instamatic camera that I had.
Photographs.
Oh, just one?
No, I'm sorry, no photographs. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll make a deal with you. I'll autograph your book if you don't take any photographs, all right? Have you got a pen? Okay. Here's your book. Here's your pen. Here's your camera. And here's your box. Arrivederci Roma.
And I felt bad because, like, I knew that was probably, I thought, was going to be the last time I saw him. But I knew I couldn't be a jerk, you know. I mean, he was real nice to me, and I had gotten what I really wanted to get.
Job. Hi, remember me?
Yeah, you were the fellow come to repair the VCR.
Right.
However, the autograph merely served to whet Paul's appetite, and he soon returned to the Dakota.
It'll just take a minute.
No, look, I let you in my apartment. I signed your book. I don't want you to take my photo. Leave me alone.
So I figured, well, if he's not going to stop and let me get a picture, I could probably get a telephoto lens, stand across the street from him, follow him, take a few pictures of him. He'll never be any the wiser, and he doesn't get upset. I have my pictures, and everybody will be happy.
What are you doing? I said no pictures, and you're taking pictures again.
It's just one picture. What is one picture going to do?
Look, just give me the film.
I'm not going to give you the film. It's just one picture.
Give me the film. Hey, give me the film. You're taking my...
I said, what are you so worked up for? He said, you said to me you were a fan. He said, if you're a fan, give me the film. I said, I am a fan. I said, and I only want the pictures because I am a fan. He says, well, if you're a fan, then leave me alone.
Fine. Process it. And if you like them, send me a copy, okay?
Right. I said no pictures.
And I was just disgusted at, you know, now he's mad again. And then I guess I waited probably a month or two, and I went back.
John, what do you want this time?
I don't have my camera. I don't have my camera.
And I said, John, I just want to talk to you for a minute.
Look, you come up to me on
You know,
the
I'd
street,
never
take
meant
my
to cause you
photograph.
any grief.
There are people
I
trying
said,
to
I
come up
really,
to me
really
with
feel
pictures
bad
that I wanted.
that you had gotten angry. I said, and if you tell me to leave you alone, I said, right now, I said, I will never come back here again.
I will never come back.
And I remember him looking right in my eyes, and he said, stop looking at me as a Beatle. You got to treat me just like you would treat anyone else. And he said, come on. And we walked, and we went for a walk.
You used to work for that television repair company.
Paul Goresh began to live out the fantasy of every Beatles fan. From time to time during the month that followed, Lennon would let Paul tag along when he ran errands and took walks in the neighborhood.
You know, we had gone for walks on several occasions, and sometimes they wouldn't be long at all. I mean, I don't want to be misleading. Sometimes they'd be 5, 10 minutes, but they were an eternity for a fan. And I remember we were walking one day, and I said to him, if it's not going to hurt our relationship, however little it is, if I could get a picture, you know. And he laughed, and he said, yeah. He says, when we're ready to go public, he said, I'll have my guy call you, and you can take all the pictures you want then. He says, because I think I'm getting ready.
6 months later, John Lennon hired a professional photographer to promote his return to the music world after a 5-year hiatus. Remarkably, Lennon kept his promise to Paul Goresh. He invited Paul to bring his camera and attend the session.
Paul, get your shot?
Yeah.
And John turns and he spots me and he says, Paul, you made it. And he says, you know, I'm glad. Well, now you can take your picture. And it was funny because, like in the sequence of photos that I took, he's looking at me instead of the guy that they were actually paying.
Paul was astonished when this picture was chosen to grace the jacket cover of Lennon's hit single, Watching the Wheels.
When that record came out, I was so proud of it because there's only 5 names on the record. You know, there's John's name, Yoko's name, the producer of the record, the owner of the record company, and my name.
From that moment on, Paul Goresh was John Lennon's official, unofficial photographer. He became a fixture at the Dakota, documenting Lennon's comings and goings with dozens of informal snapshots.
John's fan, the amateur photographer Paul Goresh, arrives as usual.
I got to the Dakota around 11:45 in the morning. And when I got there, it was a nice mild day. It was for December 8th. The only other person there was a guy standing with a long overcoat with a fur collar and a fur hat. And he had a scarf on, and he was holding Double Fantasy under his elbow. And he says to me, "Are you waiting for Lennon?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "My name's Mark, I'm from Hawaii." And I said, "I'm Paul, I'm from New Jersey." And he said, "Oh." He said, "Do you work for him?" I said, "No." And he said, "I came all the way from Hawaii to get my album signed." So I said, "Where are you staying while you're in the city?" And with that, he seemed to change his whole demeanor from like a dope to an aggressive person, and he said, "Why do you want to know?" And I told him, "Go back where you were standing and leave me alone."
Meanwhile, Paul Goresh goes inside, hoping to pick up the copy of John's 1965 book, A Spaniard in the Works, that he's left for John to sign.
John was coming into the hall. He said, "I'll sign it for you today, I promise." So I went back outside at my post, and when I went back outside, the guy with the overcoat was there, and he was alone, again, on the other side of the archway. And he came over to me and he said, "You know, I want to apologize to you." He said, "I owe you an apology for the way I acted." He said, "But you're in New York, you never know who you can trust these days."
So we ended this interview, said our goodbyes, all took photos. I had my photo taken with John and Yoko, which I treasure more than anything. Wrapped up the gear, and then headed on down to get to our car. We were going right to the airport.
It's 4 p.m., and still hanging around at the entrance, fan and amateur photographer Paul Goresh sees the RKO team coming out of the building with their recording equipment.
Now a little bustle, people starts coming out. I start noticing a lot of silver cases and whatnot, so I figured John will be coming out soon.
Next thing, John comes walking out looking for a car that was going to take he and Yoko over to the record plant.
So he turned to Jose and he said, "Jose, where's my car?" And he said, Jose was the night doorman who had come on. His name is Jose Perdomo. And he said, "It's not here yet, Mr. Lennon."
He's looking around, and I thought it was, for a split second, I'm thinking to myself, boy, this is pretty amazing. I mean, here's John Lennon. outside of New York. I thought of that quickly, and I said I just dismissed it. In this town, it's no big deal, and that was it.
He said to me, don't forget to get your book. He said, did you get your album signed? I said, I'll get it. I'll get my album signed tomorrow. I'll get the book before I leave. And as he was talking to me, the guy with the overcoat approached him from the left. And he didn't say a word. He just held the album out in front of John. And John turned to him and looked at the album and said, do you want it signed? And the guy nodded. He didn't say a word, he just nodded. So it looked like a picture, so I snapped a couple pictures. And the first picture I took was John signing the album, looking at the album. And he nodded, and he took the album, and he just backed away.
So John is saying, well, our car isn't here. You're going to the airport. Yeah? Would you mind giving us a ride? Hop on in. We're headed in the same direction.
So as he was getting into the limousine, I took a picture of him getting into the limousine. And that turned out to be the last picture of him alive. He got in the limousine, and he was facing me. And as it was pulling away, John looked out the window and waved to me and smiled. And I waved goodbye to him. And I would never see him again.
Late this evening, one of the world's great entertainers and musicians, John Lennon of the Beatles, was shot outside his New York home. So we begin tonight by bringing you up to date on that story. John Lennon was shot 3 times at around 11 p.m. Eastern Time. He was rushed to New York's Roosevelt Hospital, but died a few minutes later. Police have a suspect in custody whom they describe only as a local screwball.
I was shocked, and then I'm saying to myself, who did this? And then all of a sudden they said, we're getting some information saying that the man that killed him may have come all the way from Hawaii. And when they said that, I immediately realized who it was. And you can't imagine the disgust and anger. Then it struck me that I might have a picture of him getting that album signed. So I called the New York City police. I said, I think I got a picture of the killer with him at 5 o'clock. And they hung up on me. So I called the Daily News. He said to me, you think you have what? And he said, Paul, are you sure that this is the man that you believe killed him? And I said, well, that's the man named Mark from Hawaii who was waiting out there all day with the album, who got the autograph. And he said, are you sure? I said, yeah. He says, because you realize we're going to put this picture on the cover of our newspaper. And if we're not right, you know, there's big problems. I said, no. I said, I don't know if that's the killer. That's the man you're asking me about that was outside there all day. So he said, all right. So what they did is they had a connection with the police station, and they had a reporter there that was trying to see what the guy looked like to see if it matched the photo. But they kept him under a coat. They put him under his overcoat and stuff, you know. But what happened was time was running out. The editor said, we got to get this on the cover of the paper. And he said, you got to find something for me. Look at his shoes. Look at anything. See if you can find, is he wearing glasses? The guy said, they have him under an overcoat. I can't see the guy. And then the guy said, wait a minute. I see a scarf hanging below the coat. And the editor said, go to press. Because he was wearing the scarf in the picture. It's just mind-boggling. It's so senseless, and it's a waste, but it achieved what that piece of garbage wanted to achieve, was make a name for himself. You know, by doing that, he linked himself with John forever. And unfortunately, you know, that's the way history is.
8 days after John's death, Paul Goresh receives a package from the Dakota. It contains the book he'd left for John to sign.
I opened the book, and he wrote, Love, John Lennon, 1980. And it was the only time he ever wrote love on something for me. John had signed it 3:30 on December 8th.
This picture of John Lennon and Mark Chapman is the only important picture Paul Goresh ever took. Ironically, it may be the one photograph Paul Goresh would like to forget. For him, the dream was over.
It seems like a dream now. It definitely seems like a dream now, especially 10 years later. That's why I thank God for the pictures. And I'm very thankful for all the memories. He owed me nothing, but here's a man that's so special, and he's bothering to care a little bit about me, and I'll always remember that, and it'll always be special to me because he was so decent.